In early 1776, the royal governor of North Carolina, Josiah Martin, sought to restore crown control and issued a proclamation calling loyalists to arms in the Cape Fear region. Recruitment efforts yielded about 1,600 loyalist troops, many of them Scottish Highlanders, gathered at Cross Creek, modern Fayetteville, preparing to march toward Wilmington and join British forces. Meanwhile, Patriot militia under Richard Caswell and Alexander Lillington moved to block this advance, choosing the narrow causeway at Moores Creek Bridge as the decisive site. The terrain around Moores Creek featured swampy marshes and a single wooden bridge, making it a natural choke point for defence. As February 26 approached, both forces marched into position under winter skies, one to advance, the other to hold back an invasion. As February 26 turned to the early hours of February 27th, the Loyalist force began its march from their camp toward Moores Creek, expecting to scatter a small Patriot militia ahead of them. The Highlanders, under the leadership of Donald MacLeod and Alan MacDonald, carried broadswords, muskets, and a fierce sense of loyalty to the crown. Meanwhile, Patriot commanders Caswell and Lillington coordinated their positions on opposite sides of the bridge, laying traps and preparing for the Loyalist advance. They had dismantled part of the bridge and greased the remaining planks, making any crossing extremely dangerous. In the dark, damp air of the Carolina swamp, both sides waited for dawn. The Loyalists confident of a swift victory, the Patriots ready for a desperate stand. At dawn on February 27, 1776, the Loyalist column approached Moores Creek Bridge, unaware of how well the Patriots had fortified their position. As they neared the crossing, Loyalist scouts fired several shots across the fog-covered creek, testing the Patriot defences. The Patriots held their fire, remaining silent behind their earthworks, giving the illusion that the camp ahead had been abandoned. Believing they faced only a small retreating force, Captain John Campbell and Lieutenant Donald MacLeod led a charge across the slick bridge, shouting, "King George and broadswords!" The Patriots waited until the attackers were halfway across before unleashing a devastating volley of musket and cannon fire. The shock of the blast shattered the Loyalist advance. MacLeod and Campbell were both struck down, and their men panicked in the confusion. Within minutes, the battle was over, the bridge strewn with wounded and fallen Loyalists. When the first volley shattered the Loyalist advance, panic swept through the Highland ranks as they realised the bridge had become a trap. Men slipped on the greased planks, falling into the cold black water below, while others tried to retreat across the narrow crossing under heavy fire. The Patriots maintained a relentless barrage, their muskets and small cannon cutting down any attempt to regroup. In moments, the Loyalist line disintegrated. Some fled into the surrounding swamps, while others threw down their weapons and surrendered. The Patriots quickly crossed the bridge once the firing ceased, securing the field and gathering prisoners from the confused and wounded. Among the captured were several Loyalist officers and over 100 muskets, swords, and supplies abandoned in haste. By sunrise, the sound of gunfire had faded, replaced by the cries of the injured and the echoing calls of Patriot commanders securing victory. In the hours after the battle, Patriot forces moved quickly to secure prisoners, gather supplies, and assess the outcome of their surprise victory. The Loyalists, scattered and demoralised, fled into the nearby swamps and pine forests, abandoning wagons and munitions in their haste. Many of those who escaped the initial fight were soon captured by local militia patrols sent to pursue the fugitives. Among the spoils were hundreds of muskets, broadswords, and even a chest of gold meant to pay Loyalist troops. The victory at Moores Creek Bridge effectively crushed Loyalist military resistance in North Carolina, ensuring Patriot control of the colony. News of the triumph spread rapidly through the southern colonies, inspiring new recruits and strengthening the resolve of independent supporters. For the Patriots, it was not just a battlefield success. It was a defining moment, proving their readiness to stand against trained British-aligned forces. In the aftermath of the stunning defeat at Moores Creek Bridge, British officials recognized the loss as a serious setback to their southern campaign. General Henry Clinton, already preparing an expedition to the Carolinas, revised his plans to account for the sudden collapse of Loyalist support in North Carolina. British intelligence reports describe the Loyalist forces as utterly dispersed, forcing the Crown to rely more heavily on regular troops and naval power. In May 1776, Clinton's fleet arrived off the southern coast, where he joined Admiral Peter Parker in a renewed attempt to secure a foothold, first targeting Charleston, South Carolina. The defeat at Moores Creek altered British perceptions of the southern colonies, revealing the depth of Patriot organisation and the volatility of Loyalist allegiance. From that point onward, British commanders approached southern operations with greater caution, setting the stage for a larger but delayed campaign that would come years later. The lessons of Moores Creek lingered in British strategic discussions, marking the battle as the first sign that the rebellion had matured into a coordinated resistance. As British fleets gathered strength offshore, the Carolinas braced for what seemed an inevitable renewed invasion. Patriot leaders in North and South Carolina coordinated closely, fortifying coastal defenses and improving militia readiness. In Charleston, engineers and volunteers strengthened the fort on Sullivan's Island using palmetto logs, whose dense, fibrous wood could absorb cannon fire. Governor John Rutledge urged citizens to remain vigilant, emphasizing unity between continental and local militia forces. Supplies of gunpowder and food were stockpiled inland, ensuring that Patriot forces could sustain a siege if necessary. Scouts patrolled the coastline daily, relaying news of any British naval activity to military command. Across towns and farms, volunteers trained in open fields, transforming local militias into disciplined companies. The spirit of defiance that had begun at Moores Creek Bridge now spread throughout the southern colonies, uniting patriots under a single purpose: to resist British control at all costs. On June 28, 1776, the long-anticipated British assault on Sullivan's Island began as Admiral Peter Parker's fleet advanced toward Charleston Harbor. The powerful warships opened fire on Fort Sullivan, unleashing a bombardment meant to crush the Patriot defenses in hours. Inside the fort, Colonel William Moultrie commanded roughly 400 men of the 2nd South Carolina Regiment, who returned fire with remarkable precision. The palmetto log walls absorbed the British cannonballs, splintering but not collapsing, greatly reducing the damage. Patriot gunners conserved ammunition carefully, targeting vulnerable points on British ships and disabling several in the shallow harbour. Despite intense heat and smoke, morale remained high among the defenders as they repelled repeated naval assaults. British troops under General Henry Clinton attempted to cross from nearby Long Island, but were blocked by strong currents and Patriot musket fire. After 9 hours of fierce fighting, the British fleet withdrew in defeat, leaving behind burning ships and heavy casualties. The stunning victory at Sullivan's Island proved that the southern colonies could stand against Britain's might, inspiring confidence across the American cause. The Patriot victory at Moores Creek Bridge and later at Sullivan's Island marked a turning point for the southern colonies. The defeats forced the British to abandon their early plans to control the southern coastline and instead focus on northern operations for several years. North Carolina's success emboldened neighbouring colonies to strengthen their own defences and commit more troops to the Continental Army. Leaders such as George Washington took note of the Carolinas' determination, viewing their actions as proof that local militias could stand against the world's most powerful military. The Southern victories also secured vital morale and political momentum for the Declaration of Independence, which followed only months later. In London, British officials were stunned by the rapid collapse of Loyalist resistance and began rethinking their approach to colonial warfare. Across the American South, The stories of these early battles became symbols of unity and courage, told for generations as the foundation of America's fight for freedom.